Capitalism is evil. And you know what? I feel like you don't have to look too far into it to come to that conclusion. You know, people who many consider to be very successful capitalists will just sit there, stare into a camera, and tell you in great detail about their evil plans and what they think is good to do to make money off of the evil things they want to do. Right? So I was just, looking, prepping show as I do, and I looked over at Valuetainment. It's been a hot minute since we looked at what Patrick Bet David's been doing, and I saw that he had a video out called "Global Water Crisis: Why Michael Burry is Investing in Blue Gold." And man, the fact that we live on a planet that is made up of so much water, and they're calling it blue gold in this is so telling. It's so bad. Anyway, here, let's dive into it, shall we? Hello, Geno. I appreciate the compliments. Thank you.
So if I was to ask you right now, if an enemy wanted to attack our country, U.S., let's just say, how would they do it? You may say, well, Pat, they're going to do cyber. They're going to do biowarfare. No, they're going to do...
Okay, I haven't, again, no pre-watch Reno. I did not anticipate with him opening up with, how would an enemy attack the United States? All right.
Nuclear. What if I told you they could do it with water? If U.S. had a water crisis and you and I don't have water, you know how long we can go without water? 3 days.
We have access to some of the largest freshwater reserves on the planet. The Great Lakes. Just, it'd be really hard for an enemy to steal our water.
Say up to a week, but most studies say 3 days. And one of the biggest crises we're dealing with right now worldwide is water crisis. When I show you some of the statistics on what it's looking like, when you
due to climate change, yes, and also overuse.
Watch the movie Big Short. If you remember the movie Big Short with Michael Burry, one of the biggest investors that everybody worldwide follows. He's got this hedge fund called Scion hedge fund that I think he manages nearly $2 billion. You know what it said at the end of the movie? They said, Michael Burry, his next investment and commodity that he's focused on is only one thing. And what do you think it was? Water. We're going to take a deep dive why so many people around the world are worried about the water crisis.
Well, worried about the water crisis, but also just straight up are like, hey, water's going to be in short supply. Time to invest in water so we can control the water sources and make $1 bajillion off of desperate, thirsty people.
Okay, so if you give...
I mean, yes, it is feasible to poison the Great Lakes, I suppose, but it would take a lot of doing.
Yeah, to this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Let's get right into it. According to a UN water conference, the world faces a 40% shortfall in fresh water supply by 2030. And when we break down water on how much we use worldwide, we use more than 4 trillion cubic meters of fresh water per year. And just to kind of put that in context on how much 4 trillion cubic meters is, 1 cubic meter equals 264 gallons of water, 1 cubic meter. So now let's continue. Pat, what do you mean by all this water? Don't we have all this water? The ocean? Why should we be worried about water? 71% of Earth's surface is covered by water. That should be good news, no? Well, there's a difference between what kind of water we drink. Watch this. 97% of Earth's water is salt water. 2% is fresh water trapped in glaciers. 0.65
True.
percent is the fresh water that we use for everything, such as drinking. Let's focus on this 0.65%. Where do we get this fresh water from? Here's what it looks like. 75% of it is withdrawn each year from rivers, lakes, and reservoirs. 25% comes from groundwater aquifers. And 80% of the water withdrawn in the U.S. is used for cooling electric power plants and for irrigation. So I just want to give you a visual here. When you look at two of the reservoirs, the largest reservoirs we have in U.S., you'll see Lake Mead and Lake Powell. And if you look at these pictures, both of them have experienced critically low levels recently. Here's what...
True. So far, I've got no disagreements. I'm going to guess though that when he gets to the prescriptive part of the video, things are going to go a little wonky.
What it looks like in 2000 versus today. In 2000, these two reservoirs were full. 95% they were full. Today, they're roughly 25%, said Brad Udall, a water and climate scientist at Colorado State University. It's hard to overstate how important the Colorado River is to the entire American Southwest. Now, you may say, I'm not a math guy. Look, 95% just 23 years ago. To today, 25%, no matter what the number is, that's not a good thing on what the numbers are looking like. Where we've gone to where we are today. Today's sponsor is BetterHelp, and it's interesting because just today we were alone, we were two. Sometimes you do a session with somebody and you'll get 10% discount on your first month. So now let's take a look at how much water we domestically have been withdrawing since 1960. When you look at this chart, here's what it shows. If you look at the dark blue, it's domestic, then industrial, then total irrigation and livestock. So obviously 600% increase since 1960, that's 73 years ago to today. That's not a good thing to see. However, 70% of freshwater withdrawals are used for agriculture purposes, 20% for industrial use, the rest of the 10% are used for domestic, you and I drinking water. By 2050, water demand is expected to increase from 20 to 30%. And by the way, when we're saying 2050, I want to show you what the comparable was of where we were in 2010.
Those reservoirs are much fuller right now. Wait, really?
California's water storage system seen a stunning turnaround after a stormy winter, putting an end to the state's 3-year drought. Associated Press put together these before and after photos. Check these out. They show the drastic changes to major lakes and reservoirs this spring, from dry boat docks and dusty shores to just millions of acres of feet of water. Right now, 12 of California's 17 major reservoirs.
Holy shit, dude. Yeah.
Are filled to the historic averages, and with California's historic snowpack waiting to melt, the Department of Water Resources says
holy shit,
flooding probably going to be inevitable.
Yeah, look at those
Yeah,
before and
it's
after.
cool. It's great to see.
Wow,
that.
yeah.
So, yeah, reservoir, like, height obviously ebbs and flows. We do have a fresh water crisis, though. I'm not going to disagree with him on that, but just like, yeah, I'll save some water for you. I mean, I live near the Great Lakes. I'll be fine.
And what they're expecting to be by 2050. In 2010, 1.9 billion people lived in severely water-scarce places, and this number is expected to increase to 3.2 billion by 2050. So now, if you wanted to find out where is the freshwater scarcity trend worldwide, here's what we would look at. If you look at this chart here, you will look at the numbers to the right that says 100%. So Northern Africa, 100%. Middle East, South Asia, they're not in a good place. Then second worst would be East Asia, and you could look at Southern
It's almost like there's some sort of climate change happening.
Africa, and if you were to say which ones are the best, you got North America, South America, and Australia Pacific all at 25%. Now, when you look at this, you know, the issue with water, there's been many scandals with water over the years. I'll give you one of them, especially with Nestle. When it was discovered that Flint, Michigan's lead-tainted pipes created a local water crisis, the government originally gave out free bottled waters, but it eventually ended. And at the same time, Department of Environmental Quality had approved Nestle's request to increase the amount of water it pumps from the Great Lakes. In the same month, the state decided to stop giving free bottled water to Flint. It was effectively deciding to give away millions of gallons to multinational corporations, besides a one-time $5,000 permit application fee. Under Michigan law, Nestle, the largest food and beverage company in the world, must pay the state only $200 every year administrative fee to bottle and sell 400 gallons a minute of Michigan groundwater. And
yeah, which just real quick, like, that is fucking crazy. The amount of leeway we give to bottled water companies is insane. Like, they will roll into small towns and buy up, like, underground reservoirs for, like, a pittance, and then never pay another dime, you know, as they monopolize, like, the town's only water source. This is something that's actually happened a lot in Central and South America. With these multinational companies like Nestle. And it's gotten to the point where, like, they legitimately have a death grip on some local communities. That they roll in, they privatize your only local water source, and they say they're gonna treat you real good, and then all of a sudden they're charging your entire town for bottled water. You know?
Bottle and sell 400 gallons a minute of Michigan groundwater. And that's just Nestle in Michigan.
Yeah, what water should be decommodified and handled democratically.
Now let's look at Nestle in California. Nestle has maintained that its rights to California spring water date back to 1865, but a 2017 investigation found that Nestle was taking far more than its share. In 2020, the company drew out about 58 million gallons, far surpassing the 2.3 million gallons a year it could validly claim, according to.
Yeah, and I bet they paid like a $100 fee for going 25 times over the limit of what they were granted.
The report, Nestle has taken on average 25 times as much water as it may have a right to, according to the story of a Stuff Project, an environmental group that has been fighting to stop the bottled water company's operation in California for years, while California is facing record droughts and wildfires. So now, every time there's a crisis, there's opportunity. Why? Because a capitalist or an entrepreneur can come in and say, let's solve this problem. If we can solve this problem, there could be a lot of incentives for it as well. So watch what's been happening with this. Matthew Deseri, the president and co-founder of the hedge fund Water Asset Management, that's literally what it's called the U.S. water business the biggest emerging market on earth, $1 trillion market opportunity. And
yeah, but by the way, if you see someone who refers to water as a $1 trillion opportunity, like, all I'm gonna say is, like, that's the sort of thinking that leads to, like, French revolutions, all right? That's the kind of thing where, like, people will get so incredibly mad that you are commodifying their very existence, like, the very, like, water proportions of the human body, and you're commodifying them. They're gonna get really, really angry. Yeah, let them drink Coke. Exactly. That's going to be the rallying cry of the 2050s.
Matter of fact, like I told you earlier, even Michael Burry at the end of the movie in Big Short said that his focus had become on one commodity, and that is water. Here's what he said in an interview in 2015. Transporting water is impractical for both political and physical reasons, so buying up water rights did not make a lot of sense to me. What became clear to me is that food is the way to invest in water. That is, grow food in water-rich areas and transport it for sale in water-poor areas. This is the method for redistributing water that is least contentious and ultimately can be profitable, which will ensure that this redistribution is sustainable. And he's
just use the food as little vessels to transport the water. People in water poor areas don't need to drink. Just let them eat food. Let them eat the bread we make with sawdust. It's fine.
Said the following about wine. Those of you guys that drink wine, you ready for this? A bottle of wine takes over 400 bottles of water to produce. The water embedded in food is what I have found interesting. So it just tells you, guys that are thinkers, they're going to see opportunities to fix this problem, which means that's a good thing for us long term. There are 3 ways.
Wait. No, investors don't fix the problem. They commodify the problem. This could be managed with just democratic control over water sources that aren't just like the government giving kickbacks to private corporations. They're just looking for a way to profit from it, which is not necessarily making the thing better. You know, like, for example, right? Light bulbs. We've known how to make light bulbs that last for, like, 2,400 hours since, like, the early 1900s. But you know what? Light bulb manufacturers and companies came together in the 1920s, and they basically said, hey, we want to sell more light bulbs, so let's all just agree to lower the effective hour usage of light bulbs down to 1,000, and you know, we'll all sell more light bulbs. And you know what? It fucking worked. They sold like 50% more light bulbs. And they did that for like the next 50 to 60 years. They are not out to provide the best product. They are out to make the most money. So, like, saying investors are going to fix this is just a lie. Investors are looking to invest. They're looking to have a profit return, which is not necessarily fixing the problem. Now, we could much more easily just fix this at the source and not privatize the water in the first place and then be able to democratically distribute water to places that need it. But, you know, that's, of course, too much work, and we would much rather make trillions of dollars for, 10 people in boardrooms across America, I guess.
Ways to invest into water. Number one, purchasing water rights. Number two, invest in water-rich farmland. And number three is invest in water utilities, infrastructure, and equipment. So now one of the technologies that can solve the problem is a process called the desalination, which is a process by which...
Okay, desalination can help, but unless we have massive breakthroughs that allow us to do desalination on a scale we haven't ever achieved before, like, this is not currently the thing that is going to fix the problem. We could maybe invest in like $1 trillion like bit of infrastructure to like provide water with like desalination, but it would be one of the largest public works projects of all time. And then you still have to transport the water from the desalination plant.
The dissolved mineral salts in water are removed. Currently, this process applied to seawater, one of the most used to obtain fresh water for human consumption or agriculture purposes. So if you look at this flow here, step number one is seawater intake. Step number two, the intake screening facility. Then it's pre-treatment filters. Then it's reverse osmosis membrane. Units remove salt and other impurities from water. And then step number five is post-treatment to drinking water standard. Then you got step number six, drinking water supply tank. And then last but not least, step number seven, seawater concentrate outlet. All of this process turns seawater into drinking water. It looks like a technical process, but one of the largest desalination plants in the world is Sorek Desalination Plant, is located south of Tel Aviv, Israel, and it produces 137 million gallons of potable water a day. And the largest plant we have in the U.S. is in Carlsbad, San Diego, which produces roughly 50 million gallons of water per day. So this is all good news, because once the world found out that this was a problem, people started looking into it, and this started in 1960. And if you look at this chart here, you'll see the growth of desalination globally from 1960 to 2020. It's climbing, and the cost of desalinated water has been coming down as the technology evolved. Matter of fact, in the last 3 decades, the cost of desalination has dropped by more than half. And even globally, more than 300 million people now.
Oh, yeah. No, 100%. Patrick Bet-David is evil. Like, that's why he's talking about, like, yeah. If we just invest in it and make $1 trillion, it'll fix the problem. We just need to invest in these technologies. And, if some people don't get the water they need, that's okay. They can just fucking move, just sell their house to Aquaman.
Get their water from desalination plants from the U.S. Southwest to China. But there are some that focus on it more than others, such as Saudi Arabia, which produces 20% of the world's desalinated water with 9 million cubic meters.
I mean, like, eventually we are going to have to, like, resort to more and more desalination plants. I'm not necessarily opposed to that. It's just, it takes a while to get a desalination plant up and running, and it's not going to be a solution for places that are inland,
Produced per day, 60% of its water is desalinated. And according to Statista, if you look at this, Saudi Arabia is investing heavily in desalination. Here's what it's looking like. If you look at the left, you'll see Saudi Arabia at the top, then it's UAE, then it's Jordan, Egypt, Oman, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Kuwait, and others.
Hey, Master Chief Ray.
So when you're looking at this, of course, any way we see as a solution, you think about it and say, okay, the future looks bright. There's people that are working on this. Now, there's certain people that say there's downsides to desalination, with one of them being it uses a lot of energy, could be bad for the environment, it hurts the fish. Desalinated water is more expensive than imported water, and for every gallon of fresh water created, 1.5 gallons of salt water is created and sent back into the ocean. And some argue that this is
Well, no, the problem with desalination is the massive amount of salt it leaves over as a byproduct. Because if you just pump that back into the ocean, like, it increases, like, the ocean's level of saltiness, and that over time is not good, actually.
Problem, and the state of California has increasingly taken an anti-desalination position, citing environmental reasons.
Again, when he's saying 1.5 gallons of seawater, what he's saying is the saltiest substance you can possibly imagine. Like, the salt water that gets pumped back into the ocean is like so salty it like kills any living thing that tries to exist within it. You know, fish that try to breathe that salt water, they just die. It's not great.
Final thoughts on this water, on how I'm processing it. Number one, I trust capitalism. What do I mean by capitalism? Whoever's going to be negatively impacted by this has to fix this. So let's look at drink.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, look, hey, you're gonna be negatively impacted by this over in the Middle East, in the arid regions of Africa, in arid regions of Asia. Well, have you considered going and fucking yourselves? Like, you gotta fix it yourself. Sorry, time to make my money.
Companies who would be negatively impacted by this. Coffee relies on water, so that's who. Coffee.
How is that the first thing you list? How is coffee the first thing you list on what will be negatively affected by not having enough water? It's literally the thing we need to live. But you know, coffee's pretty good too, I guess.
Coffee being Starbucks, 7-Eleven. Soda is going to be impacted by this, which is who? Coca-Cola, Pepsi, all the other guys. They got to figure this out. Water companies are going to be impacted. There's so many companies.
Oh, yeah, I never considered that water companies would be impacted by a water crisis. Dude. Man, millions of people watch his fucking show. This is insane.
Companies that are going to be impacted by this, if it got so bad, they would all gather their resources to figure out a way to fight against the water crisis. So that's one. There's two.
What? Why? Wait, why would they pool their resources to figure out how to fight the water crisis, how to solve the water crisis, when the water crisis literally makes their products more valuable? Having water in shorter supply makes their products that are water-based more valuable. They can charge more for a Coke. They can charge more for a bottle of water. Why? They have to deliver less product and they get to take more money. They are not incentivized to solve it. They just want to profit from it. That's what capitalism is about. It's not about solutions to problems. It's about profits. Even at the expense of creating more problems.
Too much money involved that there's no way they're going to allow this to happen. Number two, technology advancement. I was at Harvard. One guy sitting there from Lagos, and he says, here's what we created. We're raising money right now. Each plan is $100 million, and we're able to raise this much money. And if we do this, this is how many gallons of water we can produce on a daily basis. I'm like, okay, this is good. It was a creative way that they were doing it, creating clouds and all this stuff. And very interesting the way he was doing it. It was very different than desalination. But outside of that, I want to give you a project, an operation that the CIA worked on in the 60s called Operation Popeye. I don't know if you've heard about this or not.
Oh my god, dude. Oh my god. Oh god, he's about to say one of the stupidest things you will ever hear in your life. I can see it. He's about to be like, well, you know, the water crisis isn't really a crisis because did you know that the US government has experimented with putting chemicals into the air to make clouds? And then they can make those clouds rain? Have you ever thought about that? Well, if we get into a really bad spot, we can just force it to rain, which is a great idea, except you can't just manifest water in the atmosphere. There needs to be water already in the air, otherwise that doesn't work. Otherwise, you're just putting more chemicals into the atmosphere that operate as greenhouse gases. Which is the opposite of what you want during a crisis created by climate change.
Not, but we've known how to make rain, fake rain, look real for decades. And we've kept it kind of on the hush-hush, and we use words such as allegedly. But let me kind of read this to you so you can kind of get an idea.
Oh my god, dude.
idea what this Operation Popeye was about. It wasn't about the Popeye with the big forearm you're talking about. It's a different kind of a Popeye. So Operation Popeye was a military cloud seeding project carried out by the U.S. Air Force during the Vietnam War in 1967 to 72. The highly classified program attempted to extend the monsoon season over specific areas of the Ho Chi Minh Trail in order to disrupt the North Vietnamese military supplies by softening roads, surfaces, and causing landslides. The former U.S. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara was aware that there might be objections raised by the international scientific community, but said in a memo to the president that such objections had not in the past been a basis for prevention of military activities considered to be in the interest of U.S. national security, and the chemical weather modification program was conducted from Thailand over Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, and allegedly sponsored by Secretary of State Henry Kissinger.
The least surprising part is that Kissinger was involved and approved of this.
The CIA, without the authorization of then Secretary of Defense Melvin Laird, who had categorically denied to Congress that a program for modification of weather for use as tactical weapon ever existed. So remember, keyword, allegedly, right? Allegedly that this happened, but if that's something they did back in the days and it turned into a story like this, that means there's plenty of people that have the technology that if they really wanted to.
That's not how technology works. That's not how technology works, bud. Oh, well, a lot of people talk about this Jack and the Beanstalk story, and, that must, we don't have a Jack or a Beanstalk, but, that must mean other people have climbed beanstalks to kingdoms in the clouds and killed giants. Surely, because there are many people are saying, what is this? What is this? What? That this is not reasoning that makes any sense whatsoever.
To create rain. And even Michio Kaku had on the podcast before, we interviewed him. He was once sitting down, I think it's with Good Morning USA, Good Morning America, whatever the show is, and he's explaining to them how through laser technology, they're able to manipulate to create rain, and this has been around for a long time, and we can do this today. So, again.
Okay, so full disclosure, I did jump around a little bit while I was seeing if this would be a good video to cover, and I randomly jumped to this point in the video, and I saw that particular sentence. So this is the one sentence of the video I saw, and then I looked it up because I was just like, that sounds incorrect. And I found this article from CNN in 2011. World water use is increasing faster than our world population. The tiny island of Tuvalu has been crippled by drought and may be the first island nation to run dry. Texas has been hit by massive dust storms thanks to the state's record drought. That's just a drop in the bucket in current drought news, and it's enough to make one start wishing or praying for clouds on demand. Luckily, thanks to Jerome Kasparian, making rain appear out of thin air may soon be a reality. Kasparian, a French physicist at the University of Geneva, has focused his research on the effects of powerful laser pulses on the atmosphere. With the help of a team of scientists, Kasparian is pioneering a novel method to use these laser pulses to create water droplets in humid and otherwise rain-free air. The technique is called laser-assisted water condensation and may be the key to bringing rain with the flip of a switch. So, just gonna go. Oh my god, the article. Let's see. Yeah, traditional cloud seeding has required blasting the atmosphere with small particles of things like dry ice or silver iodide. The water molecules in the atmosphere coalesce on the tiny particles to form raindrops, just as natural rain is seeded by dust. While these methods occasionally work, the trade-off is flooding the air with chemicals that can spread wherever the winds take them. Seeding is costly and not always effective. There's also the whole aspect of having your rainwater contaminated from the start with sprayed chemicals. The laser method is potentially superior. Unlike chemical seeding, lasers are far easier to aim and much more accurate. There's also the distinct advantage of being able to turn them on and off at will. The team uses a laser capable of producing extremely short pulses of light. Each pulse carries several trillion watts of energy. Everyone can just have a several trillion watt laser laying around and summon rain out of the air with a several trillion watt laser. But more than that, we'll finish going through here. The laser is powerful enough to knock electrons off of atmospheric molecules, creating charged particles that water can stick on to form droplets. Kasparian's team has gone as far as testing the laser in skies above Berlin, using a second laser to measure and confirm any changes to the atmosphere. The team found that its laser actually produced results. Kasparian said it's not a magic cure-all, though. The laser system can't create rain in dry air, and it's not powerful enough to completely change the weather. But as it stands right now, the system is capable of producing localized showers over a distance of a few miles, which is admittedly pretty cool. But also note the part where it can't magically pull water out of air that doesn't have water in it because it's dry from having been evaporated and climate changed to hell and back. So even if you could use a laser to start a rainstorm, it relies on there being water in the atmosphere. And if there's no water there, like say in a desert, you can't make a rainstorm. And also, yes, you have to have a trillion watts of energy just laying around. So I just want you all to know this is a very silly thing to say.
Again, advancement, I trust it's out there. Capitalists, I trust, are going to figure out a way through.
Okay, so the thesis at the end of this video is, well, capitalism has never led me astray before, which I would urge Patrick Bet-David to open a history book sometime. Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, maybe a good starting point. And the other part being, I mean, I don't know much about technology, but there's probably something out there that will save us, which is not a great attitude to have about a potentially existential problem. Well, cloud seeding is a thing. It's just not always effective.
Using technology. And I just want to put this one thought in your head for you to be thinking about, because I truly believe only the paranoid survive, which is what Andy Grove said. FDR once said the following: in politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet it was planned that way. Why am I saying that quote to you? If in the future, you all of a sudden find yourself with news that's being shared to scare you with water crisis, and this is why we have to, whatever, shut down, eat, mosquitoes, or eat this, or eat that, or whatever way they're going to try to figure out to scare the hell out of you, always go back to, wait a minute. We've been able to create rain. We've been able to do all this stuff for so many different decades. Why are you using the scare tech? To just go back to, what the solutions are. Put that together. Don't use another crisis to.
You know what the solutions are. The solutions are using lasers to magically create water. Or putting clouds in the air by just spraying chemicals above cities. That's a good idea. Let's just spray the atmosphere above our cities with chemicals. That surely has never led to anything terrible before. Creating rain, what the fuck is he talking about? Cloud seeding doesn't make water? Well, that's the thing! The cloud seeding also relies on there being water circulating in the environment. It's like he's somehow made a video about the water crisis into like a conspiracy about they have the technology to fix the water crisis and they're just not doing it. And like, bro, what? It's just time to spray. You know what? We need to bring smog back. Let's pump a bunch of smog into the atmosphere. We got a bunch of rain when we pumped smog into the atmosphere around our biggest cities. So much rain. Ignore the fact that it was made out of acid. Ignore that part. Ignore that part.
To be able to control me and scare the crap out of me so I can vote for you. Be tempted to question and push back when somebody uses that crisis against you. Having said that, if you got that,
I love that the vast majority of this video was talking about how like the water crisis is real, and then he like talked about how desalination exists, but it doesn't at all meet the needs of how many people exist. And then it's just like, also we can summon clouds with lasers, or iodine or something, and that'll solve the problem, without thinking about the fact that the water isn't created by the laser. The water isn't created by spraying chemicals behind planes. That doesn't create the water. And when that water rains, if it's made by the chemicals especially, those chemicals rain down with the water, meaning that water has to be cleaned before it can be drunk. Wait, so why do cloud seeding again? I get the conspiracy, but isn't there a reason in reality why cloud seeding is a thing? Well, yeah, because cloud seeding can provide, protection from the sun. It can provide rain to the local environment, and, there's still debate about whether or not the chemicals they use for cloud seeding have a negative effect on the environment or not. People don't really know. But also, like Ashley said, it needs a very high level of humidity to actually work. And that is not a level of humidity that is available everywhere. So, yeah. Used to be done over airports, but it was too toxic. Yeah. It's not great. There's a reason why the United States isn't constantly doing cloud seeding everywhere all the time. Like if we could just create clouds and rain wherever, that would be like completely civilizational game-changing technology. We could turn our deserts into the most fertile grasslands. But we don't have that technology. It's not something that exists. Like, the only real tech that he talked about here is desalination. And, like, there are some interesting, like, evolutions of, like, desalination technology. And one of the more interesting ones I've seen recently proposed is desalination facilities that also make use of the sun's natural ability to essentially vaporize water, and tapping into like the amount of water vapor that naturally rises off of oceans as part of the desalination process. So, I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening with desalination. It's just not currently something that has enough infrastructure in America or globally to meet water needs on the level that we require. Cloud seeding just makes it rain in one place rather than another, so not only does it not create water, like you said, it can also hurt ecosystems and reservoirs that need water in another area. Well, yeah, and that's the thing, right? Because it takes humidity out of the atmosphere, and that humidity would have otherwise, like, moved along someplace else and probably created rain, right? So there's also, like, a geopolitical element to, like, cloud seeding, where, like, if it was deployed widely as a method of, like, trying to recapture water, could lead to, again, more water conflict between countries and such.